Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Space Jam by Joe Pytka, Suicide Squad by David Ayer, Birds of Prey, directed by Kathy Yan, and newly released The Suicide Squad by James Gunn, and Space Jam: A New Legacy, directed by Malcolm D. Lee. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Tell me, boy, how's it going?
It's going okay. It's going okay. How was your week of movies?
A week of movies is all right. Obviously, folks listening to this know what's coming around the bend. Had to watch, of course, the new Space Jam. We have the Suicide Squad coming out, and I figured it'd be kind of hard to do both of those films without doing the homework back catalog for them, what kind of they led into, and why these movies are getting some sequels. So figured to flesh out a whole episode and cover the ground.
I'm glad you're doing them together for sure.
Yeah,
especially the entire Harley Quinn kind of trilogy. I think it'd be good to do that together.
Absolutely, and it really has become a trilogy for Harley Quinn, especially with seeing Birds of Prey in kind of the arc of the character. So.
For sure. Okay. Well, hey, let's get started with the old tried and true childhood favorite for sure for many of us. But Space Jam, directed by Joe Pytka.
Everybody. No, I'm not going to sing it, folks. I can if you get me drunk enough. But Space Jam, a classic to be sure. I honestly, what was surprising about looking into some of the production of this and prepping for it, and obviously looking into some of the factors that upset me with the new film, I was just surprised at the reception online of this. So I'm interested to see maybe even
the
feedback.
Original Space Jam had negativity.
Yeah.
Wait, like old reviews,
yeah,
or like
older reviews when Space Jam was coming out. It was received poorly.
But I guess we saw that. The movie was meant for us at our age.
I believe so. Yeah, I think
when it came out in '96.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was only 2. I wasn't even in the market. I was.
You were.
Wow. So I saw it later in life. But
Space Jam does kind of have a, I guess pun intended, legacy to it because of, I mean, it's this anomaly of a film that is based off of Looney Tunes kind of combining with basketball. It's an oddball for sure. We have this kind of coming off of the back of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, maybe less impressive type of combination of animation and film, like Cool World, things like that. That was definitely hot for a moment.
It was, yeah. I mean, Space Jam, that was big when it came out relatively just because of Michael Jordan behind it, correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just the novelty of such a wacky movie and a wacky premise.
So wacky.
Yeah. I'm happy to say, I mean, the biggest highlight in returning to it is that the animation holds up. The combination of animation with the Looney Tunes, with Michael Jordan on screen, you can definitely tell, and why I mention some of the precursors like Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right.
You can definitely tell that is the production's main goal, to say, okay, how good can we make these scenes look with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny on the same screen?
And it's nice to hear that it holds up.
Absolutely. And if anything,
I mean,
it looks like very premium Looney Tunes as well. It's not like just cartoon-based Looney Tunes. As far as the animation quality, as far as the characters and the movement themselves, very creative, very smooth, silky smooth, I would say.
That's great to hear.
Absolutely.
You would think the opposite, you know? You really would think the opposite. But...
Yeah, you go back and maybe less technical skill or something like that. Unfortunately, when we come to the sequel, not exactly the case. I think animation is honestly where it suffers in some of that, but we'll obviously get to that. Wow, how funny is that? I know. How funny is that? When it comes to Space Jam as well, I think it's an enjoyable plot because of the need for basketball. The need for basketball is taken tongue-in-cheek, that we're combining these two worlds, but it's done in a way that it's part of the butt of a joke, but it really does make sense for what is happening on screen, because essentially you have these aliens conflicting with the Looney Tunes, and we have the need for basketball being a way for them to get over them on it. And it was just nice to see as far as it being a creative reason and for the comedy of the situation, getting a need for this obviously oddball combination of basketball and the Looney Tunes. It was a good time.
It is a good time. I haven't seen it for years. It's just fun to watch. Isn't it fun to watch?
Yeah, it is a ball. I think. Well, jeez, I keep on with these puns. I think when it comes to why I think it really does hold up, because it's a breezy watch. It's a short film. It's right to the point.
Yeah, it yeah.
Even some of the B plot with the other basketball players, it's refreshing, and obviously is there for maybe some of the more adult crowd that is seeing this with their kids at the time, or even just basketball fans that may be coming to this film to see what's up with this. It is through and through a Looney Tunes movie for Looney Tunes fans, and I think has a certain focus to it that I, per se, I wouldn't call myself a really big Looney Tunes fan, but you can definitely tell that this first major feature film for the Looney Tunes, actually, come to think of it, I don't know if there are other Looney Tunes major theatrical releases.
Boy, on the top of my head, I do not know.
Yeah, because if you think of like the Muppets or something like that.
Oh,
you know
wait,
I mean?
no, Looney Tunes has, you're talking like full-on...
Like theater releases.
I think there might be some.
Yeah. Well, either way...
I kind of get lost in all the animations, though, just going back to it.
Yeah.
But...
either way, on top of the novelty of how well the production is done, of seeing these animation combined with live action film, how truly funny some of the jokes are and being inspired by the plot, you can definitely tell, like, in the writing room, they kind of wanted to, maybe with an outset, with a goal to have this idea of Michael Jordan with the Looney Tunes, and they make it work. They problem solve around that, which is, it's honestly a ball to really see how it's played through. And again, I can't stress enough, the technical side of this film is really why I think it's deserved of its, long-going reputation.
That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. I would. I can't wait to show it to my kids and like have me as an adult still enjoy the film. I mean, those are some of the best kids films when the adults can enjoy them too.
Absolutely. When it comes to some of the sound as well, I think I only mentioned the sound just because the sequel is a little bit uninspired when it comes to the soundtrack. I mean, for Space Jam, the first one. When we come to the soundtrack, you have really what have become iconic songs. I Believe I Can Fly.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
The actual theme of itself. I mention it just because for me it's such a standout, and maybe back in the day that was seen as, oh wow, they're really tying in a lot of shit to this. You know, you can definitely tell there's money. They're trying to get it on people buying the CDs, the soundtracks and whatnot. Right. For me, it absolutely added to the enjoyment of, wow, this is just a monster of a film that they were shooting for the stars for. Other than that, I think it's important to note with this Space Jam, with the second Space Jam, to a certain extent with all children's movies in general, obviously criticizing them, I'm not I know what I'm going into. I'm not looking for Citizen Kane. This is not, something that I get lost in and say, oh, well, it's not really standing up in this way or that way. I understand what it's for and what it's marketed towards. And if anything, that's why the first Space Jam is fairly positive on my end because I think it's worth the time, especially if you have a younger audience with you.
Yeah, and what you're saying is you know exactly what the movie's supposed to be, and it's doing just that. It's hitting all of those marks that you would want it to see, that you want to see.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Also, on the same note, if my criticism of these films maybe isn't as robust as our viewers are used to, folks at home, also understand that it is a kid's film. and even if I want to crucify something, there has to be kind of a grain of salt that's taken with it.
Okay.
So, not too much more to say about Space Jam. Of course, if you haven't seen it yet, I think it's absolutely worth a watch in that regard. If you have seen it, maybe not worth returning to it, but definitely worth recognizing for what it is. We're going to go ahead and give Space Jam a 61.
61. Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah. And it's on HBO Max. So
Oh, it is.
Yeah. They have, I guess, the full license, and maybe that's through Warner Brothers, because I think HBO Max is tied in.
Yeah,
Yeah, with WB.
I just see, and Michael Jordan's great too in it, right? Like he's just a good person to watch. I loved him. It's just crazy to think, just back then, with the way the world was, because he was a representative and he was a spokesperson at McDonald's, correct?
Yes.
And there's like McDonald's advertising in the film. I remember that in the last time I watched it, and I was like, "What? You're not going to see that anymore."
You're right.
Just McDonald's, all about the big. It's just it's hilarious. I love it.
Now it's a different type of advertising.
But right. But 61, it totally sounds right. That I'm definitely going to watch it soon, just to kind of bring me back to those days.
Right.
Also,
Exactly.
well, let's move it on to Suicide Squad. This is the 2016 release, kind of one of the first big movies out of the DC universe, or the revamp of those films, that franchise.
Yeah, this is Suicide Squad. It's obviously coming after now going back a good amount of years after Batman versus Superman. I will give credit to the type of creative work done within that universe. Obviously, by the end, I mean, these movies have been out for some time.
Right.
By the end of Batman versus Superman, we have Superman, falling in that film. And the fact that this film, as far as the comic book type of story, is based off of that and uses that as a creative influence for what is driving the plot forward, I do got to give some credit for. I will return to this with the Suicide Squad, the James Gunn one, the brand new one. Like this movie or not, there is a lot that is built upon it for the universe that these three movies, this kind of self-titled Harley Quinn trilogy that's kind of being referred to online, at least. There's a lot that's knocked out of the way, and that Suicide Squad 2016 kind of takes a bullet for that reason. So some mild credit there. And especially for my comic book watchers, I guess if you're on the other side of that, the cape shit type of movies that it's referred to as, it is almost in a way kind of some homework that you might have to do if you're really interested in this. That does not hold back me at all from a god-awful movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Tom was sweating bullets over
well,
there.
not sweating bullets, just be like, where did this guy go? That's all.
Yeah.
Boy, I mean...
listen, I think that's where a lot of the positivity of this film ends, more so in its kind of legacy of what,
Right, of course, yeah.
But, man, let's tear into it. Right from the get-go, there is nauseating levels of music in this film.
Big pet peeve of yours.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this has come up now on multiple episodes. I will have to bite the bullet eventually on what kind of spawned this hatred of...
we have to wait. It's going to ruin us once when that comes out. But yeah. Not that you don't... We've had large discussions about music and film.
Yes.
Large discussions about it. And I'm glad that you're at a point and that you can totally be okay with it, but it better be done really well and really appropriately.
Absolutely.
Any whiff of you thinking they're just putting in music now. They're just putting in music for the music or to like rush things along or something like that to get a feel or a vibe. You sniff that out immediately, and it just takes you right out of it.
And I would say almost to the point that it is. I mean, anyone will have whiplash from the type of music in the first. I'm talking like 20 minutes of the film is just song after song after song. They don't even let it play out in a lot of instances.
Right, okay.
Not only do we have musical introductions for every character, not only do we have musical interludes to bridge scenes together to keep it more snappy, the song choices are just like, oh my God, they're just all over the map.
Yeah, and I will say it could be fun introducing each character with a new song. I mean, it's fun. The whole thing of Suicide Squad, everyone has such big personalities, and you want to match their personalities and the different songs. I don't mind that. Mm-hmm. But the way it can be done is either sloppy or just way too much of a punch in the face.
Yeah. It is. It's rough, especially when some of the songs are just going for a general feel of a character, while some of the songs have lyrical meanings to it. And then the third worst outcome of that is when the songs are just put in probably just for marketing money reasons.
Of
trying
course,
to sell soundtracks.
yeah, of course.
Really rough. How not rated R? I don't know how this was not rated R, especially hindsight being 2020 with the Suicide Squad being very rated R. I am confused by this. I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to criticize something for how it was made. Obviously, in 2016, I don't know, was Deadpool out yet? I forget. Maybe that Band-Aid of a rated R superhero film wasn't ripped just yet. Either way, it made me question multiple times in the film if I was watching an edited TV cut.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it felt almost inappropriately forced into kind of a safe area, especially, and I'm not even just talking about blood, I'm talking about the language of these characters. Just quick example, there's a moment where Will Smith's character Deadshot has a moment where he kind of like gets a little bit of freedom, and he's excited by it out of prison, and he says, "You jokers must be crazy," and it's just like, would he say that? It just felt so PG. It just didn't jive at all. It didn't make him seem cool. It was just
so
bad.
You definitely would have bumped it up a few points if it was rated R and probably had some more rated R content.
I think so, and I think I have no idea on the editing floor what this looked like. Obviously,
well, the trailer looked amazing.
Yeah, the
trailer fooled all of us.
right. The old bait and switch was a catfish.
Gosh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, there is similar buzz around this film to have a David Ayer cut, much like the Zack Snyder cut to Justice League, because apparently there is enough on the cutting room floor of the editing.
But who did it? The original director would still go back and...
Yes, because apparently...
What's the point of that, then?
Yeah, don't quote me on the exact domino falling of this, but apparently it was similar. Warner Brothers got involved. That actually, the company that cut the trailer then did their own cut. They ran both in kind of press screenings. One did better than the other.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know. I believe that there'll be something underneath this film that is going to turn it around? No, because even with a 4-hour mind-numbing experience to Justice League and the Snyder Cut, They can't
do it now because they can't undermine the new Suicide Squad anyway.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
true.
They can't take
They'll
eyes away from
cannibalize
that.
the market. Absolutely,
yeah, it's just too much.
Absolutely. Let's dive into a few other things. Viola Davis is great. Amanda Waller is a character that is in a lot of the cartoon iterations of Batman. Is obviously in the comic books. Wonderful, wonderful job at just being a menacing presence. And I will give credit to Viola Davis any day of the week. But for such a shitty movie, she is bringing her A game on creating a villain in a different way. She is a villain by administration, a villain by admin power. Like, it is interesting to watch because she'll go toe-to-toe with these criminals, and you're asking, Jesus, I mean, where is she getting this confidence from? She's getting confidence because she just knows her shit that well. And Viola Davis just brings such a confidence to that. It's really a delight to see her, and it is a godsend that they got her back for the Suicide Squad, because she's undoubtedly the best part about these movies.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Not in it too much, correct?
Well, no, she gets her fair share, absolutely. And more importantly, good sequences. Even though it may not be a huge amount of runtime in both these films, good sequences to show this viciousness of the character.
That's why the trailer she was in the trailer a decent amount. Like, I think she started opening with the trailer.
Absolutely.
And she set the tone for it, and it had everybody like, "This is going to be good. Will it be somewhat like The Dark Knight?" Like,
right.
that dark grittiness, but okay.
Yeah. If we're talking about highlights as far as the performances, let's talk about the worst thing, is Jared Leto's performances as the Joker. For a little bit of time, when I've maybe seen this film only once or twice, I kind of defended a little bit of the portrayal of the Joker in that I'm a believer that the character can be whatever they want it to be. But also, at the same time, in this world, we haven't seen what the Joker is, having him being kind of like a gangbanger, gangster kind of type. I thought it was interesting, at least in a little bit. Damned in the execution, though. Jared Leto is downright cringy. It is not fun to watch him on screen. It is laughable to see his performance. And the oddest thing about it is that in the edit, in the cut somewhere, and I challenge anyone that has the balls to go back and watch this film. When you're watching Leto on screen, the audio, his lines, his voiceover work, it does not match up in some sequences.
Oh, really?
Especially towards the middle of the film, there are sequences that it just I'm running it back and I do not see the words matching up to what he is saying. It also sounds weird audio clip wise.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, it took me out of it just because
movie.
I am very technical when it comes to looking at stuff like that. But also just made me wonder more questions. What was the shit show behind scenes with this movie?
Right,
this production? You know what I mean?
Sure.
What did they cut? What was after? What was reshoots? It's just, yeah. And I think for the watching of it, kind of having that legacy going into that film, it tarnishes the overall experience as well because you kind of can't escape it. And that sound mixing is just a perfect cherry on top to the mess of the soundtrack as a whole, and how music is introduced and how it is such a weak crutch for keeping things snappy in an otherwise very boring plot. Suicide Squad is a mess overall, and you kind of come out of it at least in a position that you say, wow, that added nothing to the characters I maybe had an interest with going into this.
Yeah.
I don't think it adds to the repertoire of our actors and actresses in it. And
I know, and they came out, they thought they were coming out swinging. I mean, Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? He just did he bring anything or just bad?
No. I think Will Smith is very, very small step up from Jared Leto in the performance, just because he's not given situations that Will Smith can shine in. You know what I mean?
Sure.
In his comedy or whatnot, he's too busy trying to be a badass, and the film is too busy trying to juggle this crazy, multi-plot obsession with these characters, but also trying to, it's a mess of a film. Suicide Squad 2016. There's, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I think where I land on this for the rating more critically, if you haven't seen it, if you are a diehard DC fan and you are starting your homework on what the DCEU is doing, unfortunately, I think the film is positioned in a little bit of kind of necessary viewing to get this beginning of Harley Quinn's little plot and little trilogy. But for me, though, it is not worth the time, and definitely something you should absolutely try to avoid if possible, and only under rare circumstances should you try to get involved in this. We're going to give Suicide Squad 2016 a 16.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Ooh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Once we get into the teens, really don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time.
It's a nauseating film.
All right, once again, filling up the bottom of the barrel. It's great to fill out that, the lower scores.
I'm hoping especially for future episodes where we don't have too much of a back catalog for the sequels and type of films coming out, we can get some higher ranking movies in here. But nonetheless, it is ratings to make sure that you're watching what's important.
Alrighty, so let's go to the next one, kind of, once again, following the Harley Quinn story, kind of. We're in Birds of Prey. Movie I actually don't know that much about. I really wasn't up to it. I went to Comic-Con this year, that it was like, they were really promoting it. I didn't go to the panel, and honestly, I got the most from it that day, but I'm excited to hear of this because I actually don't know even the reviews it got, really.
Yeah.
It kind of just skate past and I didn't pay attention to it.
It was a 2020 release, and this was right before, obviously, the big lockdown of everything. So it was kind of hard-pressed for the film to do this balancing act. Nonetheless, we cannot give it an excuse for suffering from a production because this was obviously made pre-lockdown of everything.
Right, right.
The film is structured as, Birds of Prey, and then it has a very long name, The Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn. That is technically the full name of it.
Yeah, The Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn.
Oh, of one. I see. Nuanced. It is
way too long.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mess in the title, but a really good time, honestly. I think I really have to give credit to having Margot Robbie really step into this character in a way that she's not exactly being overly sexualized. Obviously, how she's dressed, how the character is absolutely a chaotic force. There is a good bit of that, also being involved in like a criminal underworld. But I have to really give credit to being a female-directed feature because the difference that you see in the character from Suicide Squad 2016 and now Birds of Prey is that in Suicide Squad we see almost every introducing shot of Harley Quinn being at ass level, and now Birds of Prey, it is about her. It's we're diving into the character and she's
interesting. Good pickup.
Yeah. And believe me, I'm not saying in an overly kind of justice type of way, but it's for me it was noticeable that there was care put into this character rather than her just being put on screen for some eye candy.
Yeah, and just real quick, speaking with like just overall about Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad, I did watch, again, Birds of Prey I did not watch. The Suicide Squad I did, and I mean, she's a phenomenal actress.
Yeah.
In a lot of different roles in movies. And does that carry through? I don't know how did you feel about her in Suicide Squad, not just her presentation, but her herself. Acting compared between both movies.
Suicide Squad, Margot Robbie, or Suicide Squad Harley Quinn, I felt definitely fell into the same type of cringe that plagues the film, and that is at the epicenter of Joker Jared Leto.
Okay.
I don't think she escapes that. I think in this finally, by the very premise of the film being a breakup kind of action comedy with Joker for the character Harley Quinn,
sure.
She has to find her own on screen, and that's why I would really be strongly believing that if there is a perspective that you see this as a trilogy for Harley Quinn, it's because of this film. This film is the cornerstone for that.
Oh, good. Okay. And she's able to be herself and
absolutely
be a character worth watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay.
And legitimately do exciting new things for the character of Harley Quinn that, I don't know, I mean, I don't have the entire repertoire of her comic book history, but it feels like new things being done, which is, I would imagine, exciting for Margot Robbie, who has really made this character her own, who has really wrote the book on being Harley Quinn, much like I would say Viola Davis with Amanda Waller.
Cool. Okay.
I think the film, unfortunately, does not escape some of that cringe. Maybe this is just not for me, folks. Ewan McGregor, who I was excited to see as the villain in the movie. Yeah. Definitely has a similar shade of... I don't mean to overuse the word cringy or anything like that, but the similar type of toughness to watch on the screen as Joker.
Cringy's a good word.
Yeah. I don't mean to overuse it, but it hits that level. I can definitely tell Ewan McGregor is having fun with the character Black Mask and also doing an interesting job because Black Mask is typically more of a gangster, early Batman character, not really coming into his own as far as idiosyncrasies and, and really wild type of or psychological profiles and whatnot. We see some cool stuff with that, but it's not really too enjoyable for that reason. For me, when watching him on screen, it was good for maybe a couple minutes, and then it really just overstays its welcome. Where a positive in that shade of criticism is that let's get the camera back on Margot Robbie again. Let's see what Harley Quinn is doing, or let's see what this very large supporting cast is doing.
Right, but she's the true shining star. How is the supporting cast?
Supporting cast is great. We have not the highest level of superhero recognizable names or rogues gallery.
Right.
But the performances from everyone are really phenomenal. Huntress is a standout from Scott Pilgrim. Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah.
She is really, really fun to watch on screen because she's kind of this vigilante coming into form, practicing lines in the mirror. So there is some self-aware comedy to this film as well, and you get that because it's not really emphasized on any superhero. So things that I wish would have been shown in Suicide Squad 2016, and honestly shown in the Suicide Squad, the sequel as well.
Okay.
But Margot Robbie, absolute heavyweight, and she does great sharing the screen as well with these other actresses. It really is great to see once the cast kind of comes together in the film, because there is a back and forth, a playfulness that is a delight to watch on screen. And even at that point, if the villains and some of the lines may be a little bit makes your skin crawl.
Yeah, they fall short.
It's still overall enjoyable watching the chemistry of these actresses on screen, which is good.
Okay.
And the movie is at its best when it supports that. That really is my number one note with Birds of Prey, that I wish it was more about Harley going through this breakup, through finding friendships, through finding bonds, and be a little bit less about we need to have a stereotypical villain. We need to have an action plot to this type of superhero film. So other than that, I think, oddly enough, this is, for something that I definitely was in your boat, Tom, not really paying attention to when it came out in 2020. I think because
the Suicide Squad just had such a stain. I just don't think I wanted anything to do with the characters, and I lost interest.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah.
There was absolutely a stain with it. And for me, I came out of this definitely more positive than negative, because it is a joy to watch Margot Robbie on screen and working this very stylish character in a very stylish plot and a very stylized movie. We're going to go ahead and give Birds of Prey a 63.
Okay, yeah, 63. That's definitely higher than what I thought you were going to give it before we started the show. When I saw that you watched it,
yeah,
that's good, and I'm glad. that 60s. Just to remind folks, like, that's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
60,
above average.
Yeah, 60s and a lot of other aggregators, scoring aggregators, mm-hmm. or other reviewers and things like that. A lot of people look down on 60s, but here, 60s is actually where 50s is a complete basic film.
Yeah, middle of the road as could be.
I'm glad that it hit the 60s at least. I am. I'm glad.
Especially,
I might give it a watch, honestly.
Yeah, especially if this character this is the trilogy for Margot Robbie's performance as well.
Sure.
Being such a mark on the character. I'm glad that she has a close to solo focus on the film, and.
But it's cool that, like you said, she's not afraid to share it either.
Absolutely.
She's not afraid to share the focus.
Absolutely.
That's good. I'm glad that that's kind of balanced, and I'm glad she kind of gave justice to it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that was our previously released movies. So we're about to go into our in theaters, are now playing. But first thing, we just want to go ahead and do our producer segments. This is when we take a break in the podcast, thank the listeners who we think as producers, because we go by the value for value model. Do you enjoy the podcast? Are you enjoying multiple reviews? Are you going back and listening to multiple episodes from Vin? Are you going to thedailyratings.com, checking out all of our movies, all of our content there? And are you liking it? Are you getting value from it? And if so, if you could go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com and show your value and support for us with a small donation of whatever amount you want. You can write a note in. We'll read the note live on the next episode. You'll get a producer mention. Then you'll have a producer credit to your name, mm-hmm. then, for helping produce the show. And the reason why we do it is Vin and I, we just want to stay away from some corporate sponsors. We want to be, we're just doing movie reviews, but we want to have the freedom to say whatever we want. We don't want to just be shilling for products we don't care about and everything, like taking breaks constantly. You can hear people losing their souls when they're reading ads on podcasts, and you guys are just going to fast forward through them anyway. And it's just, we're building a little community here, a little tribe, and it would mean the world to us if you just stop by thedailyratings.com just to check out the site would be great, but, if you stop by the donations tab would be even better, and if you could give us a little something. It doesn't take all that much money. It takes a little bit of money to do this, and it sure does take a lot of time, though, as well. And we're enjoying it. We hope you are, too. And again, donate, and we'll write a note, and we'll read it on air as well, and we really just appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And okay, so that's it for that segment. Coming out of that, our in theaters are now playing films. Let's go ahead and go to The Suicide Squad.
Yeah, let's keep them together, and then we'll have the Space Jam kind of bookend these things. So The Suicide Squad, James Gunn's venture into the DC world. And it is certainly a movie. This is, I think, this movie definitely marks where I, as a watcher of superhero films, as a watcher of movies, as a critic of movies, kind of was questioning, is it good that we have a director really unchained and be able to do all that they want in the film? It's kind of hard to say that because, obviously, the lesson that is learned with the Suicide Squad 2016, with Justice League, is that studio meddling in these films usually leads to a worse product.
Yeah, for sure.
And when it comes to the Suicide Squad, you can definitely tell that this is 100% James Gunn's DNA in it. It is his movie, it is his music, it is his jokes. As an enjoyer of his movie,
for better or for worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's for better or worse. I think sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't, for that reason. But I think overall there is a lack of focus for that reason as well. It feels manic in a way.
Okay.
I will give credit. I think this, on the exact opposite ends of the spectrum, where Suicide Squad 2016 was too PG and felt, kiddie hour. This is very, 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 very rated R. As far as the gore, as far as the violence, the cursing. Definitely something to note because there is some gross out humor tied into that.
So very much pulling from the success of Deadpool.
Exactly. And completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. Believe me, I'm not saying that the PG, that was definitely part of my criticism of 2016 Suicide Squad, but definitely something to note, again, to the point of our type of review as a watching guide, as a ratings guide for if you should be spending time with this. If you're not into gore in the slightest, this is, I would say, a definite no-go because it is in the DNA of how the jokes are set up, and a lot of the time the punchline of the jokes.
Is the gore, I don't know, this is a stupid question, is the gore done stylistically, almost how like Quentin Tarantino can add beauty to it? Like it's some sort of fantastical kind of...
I think it could be definitely going for that. I think it's more so just...
Or just like, this is a rated, like...
Yeah, it's more so, let's use the rated R, and I think it's just the punchline. And as a punchline, let's make it as outrageous as possible. A visual,
So it's not special or great in any way. It's just, okay.
I will say that there is a lot of fanfare for this movie online. And I think if you're looking for a raunchy comedy, a raunchy action, gory romp, it's going to be worth your time. I think it's important to note, and why I gave that initial slight praise to Suicide Squad 2016 is that this movie is undoubtedly on the shoulder of giants. This movie works because the initial pitch of what the Suicide Squad is, a collection of villains that the government is using and has no regard for their life or their prosperity for, and is thrown at...
A cool premise. A cool superhero premise.
Absolutely.
It's different, yeah.
Absolutely. The fact that the homework or the legwork of pitching the elevator pitch of what the Suicide Squad is out of the way, that allows this film to jump headfirst into what we care about, which is the situation and seeing the even larger cast of characters getting involved in violent scenarios.
So not a big character development in the beginning. Then is that what
No,
you're saying basically? And it's
not
just,
at all.
Okay.
Yeah, but
is the first one necessary?
No, because if you understand the Suicide Squad, just even by
roughly,
the name, exactly, you can get it, and you definitely get the feel of what the film is going after with the disregard for their livelihoods and their well-being from, again, phenomenal performances by Viola Davis, and what the plot is around, which is, how they're using these supervillains.
Right,
know.
okay.
But I do have to just give credit in the sense that this film is deserved of some of the praise on how snappy and how quickly it goes into what you want to see on screen. I think I cannot give that credit to it. It has to go to the first Suicide Squad. And as much as this film wants to separate itself from that first movie and be just called The Suicide Squad, it is 100% a sequel. And I think pretty probably the end of the trilogy of this Harley Quinn saga, basically. But it's just important to note because I think that's going to be something that I can't give too much credit for, critically speaking, because it's really not rightfully claimed by the movie. It is on the shoulder of giants, or the shoulder of a very corpse of a movie like Suicide Squad 2016. Not exactly giants.
Right, yeah.
Maybe giantly bad, but and really it only works in that type of way. Like I said already, the return of Amanda Waller, the return of Harley Quinn, huge for the movie. These are great performances. Both of them are phenomenal. We do have the return of some characters like Rick Flag. I forget the gentleman, the actor's name. Those aren't really too much of a standout. They definitely got into a zone where they're returning with only the people that needed to return, and the rest of the cast is expanded upon. Yeah,
and a big cast. Idris Elba, John Cena. Mm-hmm. You have Nathan Fillion is in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, how did those guys do? I mean, that
good.
Will Smith is out, but you bring in who doesn't love Idris Elba? He's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Were they pulling their own weight, or again, were they just side pieces?
They were pulling their own weight. I obviously, the very large cast goes into the type of elevator pitch of what this movie, or what James Gunn believed this movie to be about, in that it's a lot of death, it's a lot of expendable cast.
Okay.
So I don't want to get into too much, especially as a newer film for kind of a spoiler territory, but...
no, but they're called the Suicide Squad, and the little subtitle is they're dying to save the world.
Right.
It's on the movie poster.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Idris Elba, though, you bring it up, is a little bit of an anomaly because he is way too good for this film. Throughout the entire film, you're almost scratching your head at why was this not Will Smith, because the character almost identically, especially as a Batman-type villain rogues gallery, is almost identical to Deadshot in his proficiency, in his style, in his lethalness.
So he plays Bloodsport. Mm-hmm. What is his thing? Just like... Not slingshot. What the heck is it?
It's like a slingshot crossbow. He has yeah.
Deadshot. What was Will Smith's character? Not slingshot.
Yeah.
Deadshot.
Deadshot.
So yeah, Bloodsport and Deadshot, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, kind of the same
thing.
But
Bloodsport's an established character in the realm of DC, correct?
Yes, as is Deadshot. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
It just lets you kind of scratch it. Actually, the film does kind of make fun of that with John Cena's character, that it's just kind of a repeating archetype, that there's just these badass villains that are just, they're good at killing, So
sure.
It's kind of a joke. It did make me really... stick on it too much, because it's like, wow, why was this just not Will Smith? And to the credit, if Will Smith came back in just the same way that we have consistent development on Amanda Waller, on Harley Quinn, why didn't we just do the same with Will Smith's character?
And I'll save the character a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted nothing to do with it.
That's fair. Yeah. There's absolutely some production.
He's got that pull where he could say no. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And rightfully so, because who knows? I mean, when I saw that this was being remade, I rolled my eyes. And I think a lot of people
the name
did.
of it.
Yeah.
The Suicide Squad.
And what are we dragging out? 4 years later, we're trying this again? It was Joe.
The poor DC universe, I'll tell you.
It is. It's rough. trips and stumbles. I do want to say again, for even how we're reviewing this for the podcast, folks, this being a kind of unofficial Harley Quinn trilogy, it's a shame. We have a tick down for Harley Quinn's portion of this film. I think we are a ways away, in a positive way, from Harley Quinn being just visual eye candy or sexual eye candy. She does have fun, very crazy moments on screen, very manic, very chaotic. She is very much benefiting from the new rated R on this, which is good. I think Harley Quinn's plot segment in this entire film is a waste, though. It left me really wondering, why the hell was this in the movie?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a shame to say that, because I enjoy watching her on screen, but it's whiplash. It's very jarring to sit with her plot and it kind of being dead in the middle, her kind of solo time, so to speak.
Sure.
And then have it just reincorporated back into what the movie is going for. It's a little bit of a pit stop for Harley Quinn. Maybe that's deserved, and maybe that's why this unofficial trilogy is being put to this movie. However, I think it was a total waste of time, and really a shame, too. It really took me out of the film entirely. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's done with the ensemble cast. I think a highlight is King Shark. King Shark is done by Sylvester Stallone. I don't know what the pitch was. I don't know if James Gunn just went to him and say, hey, when people make fun of your voice, can you actually just do that? Can you do that as the source? It does highlight James Gunn's almost unnatural ability to make very likable anthropomorphic characters on screen.
You enjoyed the presence of this character.
King Shark is a highlight. King Shark is not as good, but in definitely the same class as a Groot, as these characters that James Gunn creates that, or not creates, but puts on screen, that
I'm
there's
surprised
a
to hear
lovability, there's a brutishness to it, but it plays for genuinely funny moments. And
it works.
Absolutely.
So it's Sylvester Stallone doing a Sylvester Stallone impression.
I honestly, I have no idea what that pitch was, or to get him on the project. I can only imagine that he said, "Yeah, when people make fun of you, that's what we want." It's rough, but it is a very enjoyable performance. And the reason why I bring it up is it highlights when the movie works its best, is when the comedy isn't trying so hard. I can't stress enough that the rated R rating is right at home with this movie. Where the comedy fails, without any kind of spoiler to punchlines or anything like that, where the comedy fails for me is when it is trying to lead up to the goriest punchline possible. It's just trying to go for that shock value. Wow, I can't believe I just saw that on screen. How crazy was that? That is where the comedy in the movie does not work for me. Where it does work for me is where these characters are just funny by what they're doing, funny by how they're interacting with each other, not necessarily by punchline jokes. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, because what pretty much saying is, when in this movie James Gunn is trying to be funny and trying to get laughs, it doesn't play well, which is such an issue with actually Marvel and just superhero movies in general. Just these joking kind of, hey, trying to be funny and it doesn't hit. But when you let the characters be the characters, there's funny moments in there because they're ridiculous. There's this ragtag criminals getting together, and there's going to be these weird moments. And I'm assuming that's what you mean, basically.
Absolutely.
Let the characters be the characters, and if you just write the character well, you're going to have these moments together.
Absolutely. And that's why I think there could be a lot of fat trimmed to this film for that reason. I go back to what I first said with this, and that really is the cornerstone of what my criticism is for this film. Is it a good thing that we let James Gunn be completely unrestrained in how he's creating this film? Is it a good thing that we have? I mean, obviously there is studio involvement, but that we have no restraint in what he wants to do on screen and whatnot. I think those moments are where it highlights it, and I think definitely the Harley Quinn plot or subplot in this film is a 100% a highlight of that needs to be trimmed, at least in some way, or it needs to be directed a little bit more. It just feels totally out of convenience and just to give Harley Quinn some solo time on screen, but feels an absolute waste of time. It also, last thing with Gunn's directing here, and just overall how the story is portrayed in the film, it is absolutely does not break a superhero mold. As odd of a violent dark comedy this is, do not think for a second this is anything beyond a superhero film. This absolutely boils down to a very Avenger-style story structure that's about superheroes are apart, superheroes have to come together.
Right.
And I think more than anything, I mean, I put it in bold in my notes, and especially while watching it, this was a big thing, especially for how wild this film is at times. The fact that it just boils down to same old is really disappointing for me. Now, I'm not saying that can't have enjoyment in the comedy. I'm not going to say that the dark comedy doesn't work for that reason, that it's just generic. And maybe that's the training wheels to keep everything together while James Gunn is pushing the envelope with the violence and the gore. But definitely for that reason, is it something you have to make time for? No. This is something that you maybe put on in the background and say, oh, I watched it,
Right.
It was a good time.
Something that's on TNT. If it comes on TNT or something like that.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'll have it on
heavily edited for TNT.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, if I'm cooking, I'll have it on in the background.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. But other than that, not too much more to say about this, I think, as well. If you relatively like even some of James Gunn's older dark comedies, like the movie, I believe it was just called Super, then absolutely something that's going to be on your radar, something you'll probably enjoy. For me, and especially for the larger audience as a whole, especially not superhero watchers, I would say The Suicide Squad for me lands at a 52, smack dab middle of the road.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just seeing a little bit about it and the trailer and everything like that, it definitely could have been worse. I was expecting worse, actually. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, that sounds about right, 52%.
Yeah. I'd be really interested in the aftermath of this to see how many more rated R stuff that we get for superheroes, because I think
I guess it depends how it's all done.
It's definitely pushed the envelope even past what Deadpool goes for. Again, the gore is huge in this. And believe me, I'm not saying in like a wimpy kind of way. Like, it's cool, but...
It's notable.
Yeah, it's notable. It's in your face. So...
Huh. Well, okay, so that was kind of Harley Quinn.
We'll see. I mean, obviously
trilogy,
developing news with
definitely
that.
Feels how it is. I mean, they really put a lot into that character for sure. Okay, so let's move it on. Like you said, bookend it. First, we started with Space Jam. Let's go to Space Jam: A New Legacy.
A New Legacy. So, and again, I have obviously no idea the conversations in the writer's studio, but where Space Jam 1 was a Looney Tunes movie for Looney Tunes and basketball fans, this movie is very much a Space Jam movie for Space Jam fans. It's a little bit odd. It is trying to very much pull the same type of pop culture nostalgia as Ready Player One, that they are using a lot of licenses.
Interesting.
In two directions. One, the Looney Tunes are the kind of butt of a joke for that reason, because obviously in comparison to the many WB properties that are brought up in the film alone, nonetheless that WB has, they are very low on the totem pole, and it's a bit odd for that reason to see them involved. Honestly, I'd be interested, and I would challenge anyone that watches this film to kind of question themselves the same. Why not do Space Jam with someone that's not the Looney Tunes, with different type of properties, make it about the basketball or something like that. So,
okay,
just interesting. But there is a shotgun blast of properties, and
it really hits you in the face.
Yeah, everything from Game of Thrones to It to Clockwork Orange to, just all over the map.
And it wasn't fun.
Iron Giant.
It wasn't.
Where I think it fails, and obviously I will save that if I ever return to Ready Player One for a review or some sort of thing, some sort of rewatched viewing. I think where that movie succeeds is because it's referencing pop culture because the story is about pop culture. This film does not have that same plot line, so this pop culture definitely seems self-serving. It's just...
And it's not fun, Easter eggy fan. No, it's just, wow,
It's a shotgun blast. It's nauseous. It's yeah.
Wow, it's that bad, huh?
Yeah, it's maybe a little fun in a sense that there's like a Where's Waldo in the crowd to say, oh, you see that? You know, that's surface level by the nature of it.
Right,
so
right.
It's something to note because I think...
Well, it clearly took you out of the film, and yeah.
I mentioned on a previous episode, I was complaining about how long these movies are. I embellished. I thought this was beyond 2 hours. It turns out it's just pretty much...
It's like 155.
Yeah, it's 155. It made...
That right there tells you everything.
Yeah.
You thought it was like almost 2.5 hours long.
Absolutely.
Which is hilarious.
And it's that because of ads. They have... A
Wow.
large portion of the time that...
See, if you just do the value for value model, you won't get that much money, but you feel better about yourself.
Absolutely.
You don't feel like you have to take
Wonderful
a shower.
Plug.
Yeah.
Wonderful plug. When it comes to LeBron's now involvement with the world, there's a lot of time put into LeBron jumping to different properties and different worlds and whatnot that they can. It's almost it really does feel like an ad.
Ooh, that sucks.
I know, and it sucks too because I'm not saying that the secret sauce is the Looney Tunes. Again, I think there is definitely a viewing of this that maybe re-roll your cast and what they're interacting with basketball.
Yeah, but that sucks because it's Space Jam.
You're right. Yes,
Space Jam is supposed to be, it's very specific of what Space Jam is.
Right. It's a jam in space.
Well, yeah. But if you're watching it and being like, we could have made a completely different movie. Like, these characters should be doing something. Looney Tunes should be maybe doing something else. That sucks.
I know, yeah. Let's go ahead and talk into some of the Looney Tunes, though. It is very important to note that the animation quality of all of our Looney Tunes cast, and very more specifically of LeBron on the screen at the same time as the Looney Tunes, any kind of artistry that was done in that post Who Framed Roger Rabbit world is gone.
So a completely different style from what they were doing in the late 90s.
The Looney Tunes animation does not look good. And I'm a bit of an animation snob when it comes to what
style.
Should be a theatrical animation versus anything else. I'm not going to get too into that because that's honestly a little bit too cerebral, but when it comes into play that LeBron is LeBron on screen acting and these Looney Tunes are now put into kind of three-dimensional CGI animation, it looks terrible. The faces look sad. All of their faces look like they're they've been, had like a rough party weekend. They're like hungover. It's rough, and it's something to note because I think if there was a sole highlight of the animation and film being put in together for Space Jam, and in that legacy of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or whatever was the first one that started that, honestly, this film not only doesn't try to do the balancing act, but almost takes a step back.
There was even the one movie where it was there's that one the famous movie, was it in the 60s with the dancing sequence, correct? Was that with Astaire and Fred Astaire?
Maybe.
And there was another one, and there was one in another. It's a shame on me for not knowing these classic movies. There were sequences in movies that had this.
For sure.
Yeah. And it kind of followed this. They all followed the same script, the same animation, where obviously like it looked bad but good.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah. And they put care into that the animation was at a higher quality than maybe the cartoons that they came from as a source material.
Oh, yeah.
I think to maybe boil down some of my criticism to the quality of animation, these Looney Tunes on screen, they look like almost like Flash cartoons,
It's like they don't belong on the feature film.
Yeah. It's not feature film quality animation, and I can only guess that time, budget, combination of factors, production was only to get farther and farther faster to get them into CGI versions of themselves.
Right.
And in themselves, don't look great. So it's a little bit rough. There is no need for basketball in this film.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. I will say, to the credit of this being a kid's film, there is a lot more family orientation than there is. I mean, the entire plot is around LeBron's family and his son, where that was just simply not the case, and a back burner factor in the original Space Jam. So that's a positive for it, but the fact that basketball is associated with this at all, again, it's not even a butt of a joke. It's just that it's a Space Jam movie for the sake of being a Space Jam movie, so of course we have to put basketball in it. You know?
It's like ironically done almost.
Exactly.
Man, that sucks.
And yeah,
by the way, LeBron versus Jordan.
Right.
As far as like, did LeBron hold a candle to Jordan's performance, or getting across just that guy?
It's hard to say, because LeBron is really focused on like the family orientation of this film, and that's a positive. I think as a family film, it's about families going through growing pains almost, or relationships with parents. Where original Space Jam, it was about Jordan and his career and that weird moment in time where he's giving up on basketball. You know what I mean? There's,
sure.
It's very different. So I want to say LeBron does a little bit better of a job as far as having kind of a dramatic performance, you know, maybe even a little bit more emotional, but yeah, hard to compare, honestly.
Okay.
When it comes to the setup for the film, it's just not earned. It just feels heartless, and that is accentuated. That is magnified by the constant barrage of, hey, you know this movie? This character's in the crowd. And it's like, I really don't give a shit. It's like, oh God. And I can't stress enough that not only is it not earned, but it doesn't serve the plot. So almost in the same way that I would criticize music, that music has to be appropriate for what it's trying to convey on screen, if I had to kind of boil that down to an elevator pitch. In just the same way, I got no problem if you're throwing pop culture icons at me or kind of trying to work that nostalgia, as long as it makes sense to the story. And
yeah, and it could be fun. Well, and maybe like an Easter egg here or there is fun.
Right. Where this is 90% Easter eggs.
Oh my God!
The Easter eggs are the story, basically, which is rough. Obviously, in the plot of this, it is about working the Warner Brothers properties into a new product, but I don't know. It just did not land for me, and that's where I come back. If I had to summarize Space Jam 1 again, it is that it's a Looney Tunes movie for Looney Tunes fans and more. This is a Space Jam movie trying to be Space Jam, and then it's just trying to add everything into the kitchen sink into it. And it really is messy for that reason. I think I can't stress enough, this is a kid's movie. I can't really crucify it too much. To that point, there is some nice messages, some nice heartstrings that are tugged, and I think LeBron really does a great job with these actors of his family conveying a really good family movie, or rather a really good message of a family movie in a shell of a very corporate, heartless movie.
Eesh.
And that's the real shame of it. No more really needs to be said. We're going to go ahead and give Space Jam a new legacy, a 32.
32. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking. I was like, oh, is it gonna cut, past the 50 mark?
Right.
Not even close.
I wish it could. Yeah, but it's just.
It's a kids' movie, and you didn't have a good time watching it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it's a
just
kids' movie, and again, the heartless aspect of it makes me question the heart that the movie does have. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
Am I giving credit to this because I'm so starved of heart? So, but a tough week in movies to watch this, but I'm glad always to give perspective for you folks at home, because if I can save you some time in seeing something like this, then that's mission accomplished to what this rating guide is all about.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, that sounds great. Vin, is there anything else, or should we roll credits here?
I think we're good to go.
All right, Vin. Well, thanks for stopping by. Thank you so much. We'll run through the list here real quick, folks. We have the original Space Jam at 61%, Suicide Squad at 16%, Birds of Prey at 63%, The Suicide Squad at 52%, and Space Jam: A New Legacy at 32%. As always, folks, we thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating, or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our website, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value that you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors, so we greatly appreciate any support from you all. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.